as we see it, is where we, the Ghana people, we're looking at getting closer to our forefathers, by invoking them. We invite them to also come and enjoy whatever food we have prepared. Everybody as a Ghan, wherever he or she is residing, will come to his or her family house. We have certain houses where their prerogative is that they have to cook, because the chief will come there, take some of the food, and go and sprinkle.
Beni gameje is like a bag. No bashe biye homo ba. Ona no ni homo ba. Ni ni ba. Na meka nye ha wa homo yi. No eba chon homo wo ni wo yi ayi oyega. Aba ho wo ni. Nwe wo ni.
The migration story of the people of the Adangbes was that almost all the ethnic groups in Ghana migrated from somewhere before the early, let's say, 15th century.
Okay.
Our history goes deeper. In fact, the ancient Ghana Empire that even inspired our first president to take the name Ghana was a vast territory. It engulfs almost the whole of the sub-Saharan western part of Africa, right after the desert. Yeah. That shows you how vast the indigenous people have traveled all the way before they come and settle here. So the different tribes, the different ethnic groups within the Greater Accra got these differences through the migration patterns they used before they arrived here in the place we call Accra. The Adangbes and the people of the Gans, the people who speak Gan, the Adangbe speak a different dialect known as the Dangbe. The Dangbe is like a sister country to the Gan language. And they've written book and they have a history, especially the indigenous people of here have a direct history of migration through Israel. In fact, our festivals we are about to celebrate somewhere in August. It's celebrated, it's known as Homowo. We call it the Houtina Hanga. It talks about some of the history of while they were migrating to this present stage they call La or Greater Accra. They encountered a lot of hunger. Once they made a walk, they transited through Nigeria all the way from Israeli-Palestine border, migrated all the way before they came to settle here. So I'm just telling you this to know how far we came from before we arrived here. So it tells you we have a huge history.
From deep inside Africa, a sound is emanating that is causing reverberations around the world. It's the sound of Judaism. A sound of a people casting off 2 centuries of colonialism, returning to what they say are their native roots.
I know from birth I'm a Jew. Only I know that my forefather missed the way.
I grew up alongside every other Igbo youth. We kept on hearing that Igbo people came from Israel.
There was a story my mom told me at the age of 6 years. I never forget. He said, the Igbos are Jews.
And it's the story of one man, Shemuel, who went searching for what that meant and found answers on the internet, prompting a journey that led him to a community of thousands of Jews. A place where resources are few, but commitment transcends. Through prayer, practice, ritual, diet, and song. But this is also the sound of doubt from Jews in America.
They would ask me, are you from America or where? I said, no, I'm a Nigerian. They say, you black? I said, yes. They said, no, it's not true.
And rejection from family and friends.
I am like an outcast among them.
And in this volatile Christian-Muslim nation, doubt often turns to violence. This is the story of the Igbo, 25 million strong, a people once under siege by their very own government.
Biafra declared its independence.
And a people once captured and shipped across the Atlantic by the hundreds of thousands. A people who helped build America, and a people whose descendants are now discovering their Igbo roots, raising questions of cultural identity for countless African Americans.
Many African Americans actually do not know that they have Igbo heritage. The chances of their being Igbo is much, much higher than their chances of coming from Ghana or from Western Nigeria.
If you're from the right county in Virginia, you probably have a 60% chance of having Igbo ancestry.
It's a story of the strength of belief, ancestry, and community. Boosted by a visitor who inspires everyone and helps take Shemuel's dreams to a whole new reality. The Jews of Nigeria are re-emerging.
አሳያቸው የምትገዛ ከሆነ ትገዛለች በቃ
Mister, I'm a student at my page. Mister.
On the border of Black Africa, as the Nubian drummers played into the night, I was reminded of my work 20 years before with a southern African tribe called the Lemba. As far back as anybody could recall, the Lemba had claimed to be Jewish, effectively a lost tribe of Israel. Their oral tradition said they were led out of the Holy Land by priests at the time of the Babylonian invasion, and that they had taken a sacred object they called the Ngoma Lungundu with them. I believe that the Lemba and the Ngoma hold the key to understanding what happened to the Ark of the Covenant. When I first arrived in Africa in the late 1980s, I hadn't been searching for the Ark at all. I'd come here purely to investigate Lemba claims that their ancestors were Jews who'd once lived somewhere to the north in a place they knew as Senna. Today, the Lemba live either side of the Limpopo River in modern-day South Africa and Zimbabwe. When I first came here, there were still Lemba elders alive who would refer to their people as the white men who came from Senna. But at that time, it wasn't clear where Senna was. I hadn't seen my old friend Raulinga for many years. He's one of the guardians of Lemba traditions and was keen to remind me of the uniqueness of his people's culture.
We adore and worship Yahweh, the only one. We don't adore ancestral spirits. We don't worship idols of animals, trees, stones, the sun, the stars, or the moon, which Yahweh has made. Culture is the backbone. It's a unifying force. Now, I know culture changes in accordance with time and place, but the root of culture remains the same. You see, now we have lost touch with our people for about 2,600 years now.
The Lemba were convinced that they were a lost tribe of Israel. The problem was that no one believed them. They appeared to be completely African. But I discovered a number of mysterious legends and customs that were very un-African. Men from other tribes were not allowed to marry into the Lemba. They refused to eat pigs and certain other creatures. They practiced the ritual slaughter of animals with a special knife. And they circumcised their male children at an early age. Many of today's Lemba are Christian, but blend elements of Judaism even into their services.
I'll lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help.
By the mid-1990s, I'd become convinced that the Lemba claim that they were of Jewish origin could be true. They'd preserved so many Jewish traditions for so long. But final proof only came when the science of genetics was applied to Lemba oral history, and geneticist Trevor Jenkins decided to examine the Y chromosome of Lemba males. His interest had been sparked by what he'd heard about Lemba culture.
The musicologist Margaret Nabarro told me the Lemba were of Jewish origin.
I think she said that their music showed some signs of Jewish influence.
Yes, she did. And so I went with her to a Lemba cultural festival and collected my samples there.
Astonishingly, Jenkins discovered that the Lemba were indeed of Semitic origin. Subsequent research done by other geneticists showed that a significant proportion of Lemba men had a Y chromosome pattern known as the Cohen modal haplotype, which is characteristic of the Kohanim, the ancient Jewish priestly class. They were effectively a lost Israelite tribe.
It was a vindication. For the Lemba, we always knew that we're Jewish, okay? But it was for those people on the outside that had said we're just making claims. You know, that here is proof that one cannot tamper with. These people are who they say they are.
What was even more surprising about the DNA research was that the Cohen genetic fingerprint was especially strong in one particular Lemba clan, as geneticist Himmler Sudjal explained.
The Lemba identify different clans, and one group that had it at a frequency in excess of 50% was the Buba.
According to Lemba oral tradition, the Buba clan formed the priestly class and were responsible for leading the Lemba out of Israel. Genetics had confirmed that some of the Lemba's ancestors had indeed carried the DNA fingerprint of the Jewish priestly class, the Kohanim. Science had verified that part of their oral history. But could I believe the rest of it? That they'd been led out of Jerusalem by priests at the time of the Babylonian invasion and travelled to Africa via a place called Senna, carrying with them a sacred object called the Ngoma Lungundu.
Concentrated in the shadow of the Soutpansberg Mountains in the far north of South Africa. To the casual observer, they look and live much like any other traditional Southern African community. But if you scratch below the surface, there are some intriguing differences.
Here I am in South Africa, and there are these men wearing skull caps and talit, shoulder wraps. You would see this in any synagogue in America or Israel, but I never thought I'd see it here in South Africa.
I want to find out how these people seem to have Jewish customs. Samuel Moeti is president of the Lemba Cultural Association.
Pleasure.
So, I'll be honest, I came into this village and the first word I heard was shalom,
yes.
a Hebrew word.
Yes.
How's that possible? How is it that the Lemba are speaking Hebrew?
The Lembas are the original Hebrews, and they were scattered, as you know, and they crossed into Africa. So they were scattered all over. So in South Africa, in many parts of South Africa, you find the Lembas who are actually Hebrews.
Hebrew. So the Lembas claim to be descendants of ancient Israelites?
Not claim, they are.
They are?
They are.
Okay.
We are the original African Hebrew. We are scattered all over.
Can you give me a few examples of some of the Jewish
Yes,
traditions?
we don't partake of pork.
Okay.
We don't mix milk with meat.
It sounds to me like the Lemba have a unique culture surrounded by others who do not practice the same way.
That is correct. We always believe that the Jewish people who live all over the world are our brothers because we come from the same root.
Could it be that the Lemba are a lost tribe of Israel? To answer, perhaps the Lemba's oral history, handed down over the generations, can help us make a connection to the lost tribes of Israel. The Lemba's story goes like this. Thousands of years ago, they were forced out of Israel and settled in a place called Senna, which is believed to be the present-day Yemen. There, they lived as traders and craftsmen until war or natural disaster pushed them across the Red Sea and into Africa. Then began a slow migration south. Along the way, according to the Lemba, they built great stone cities. It's a claim that's fascinating. Himmler is convinced that Lemba ancestors did indeed come from the Middle East. I'm excited to get back to the Lemba to see what they make of this. And I've got the perfect opportunity. It's the Lemba's annual festival, and I've been invited. It's hard to believe that these people, who to the casual observer look just like the other African communities they live among, actually do have DNA passed down from Middle Eastern forefathers. This proves that when it comes to race, looks really can be deceiving. This annual festival is a chance for the oral history and traditional songs of the Lemba to be passed on to the next generation. This song tells the story of the Lemba's journey all the way from Israel to South Africa. Having traced this journey, I'm eager to hear what Samuel Moeti thinks about the DNA evidence.
So the genetic testing actually proved to the doubters what you and your forefathers have been saying for generations. That must be exciting news.
It is.
I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the Lemba. I knew very little about the people. But having spent time making the journey from Jerusalem down through Zimbabwe, having spent time here at this festival, seeing what your people are all about, I can only sum it up in one word, and that's shalom.
Shalom.
We've seen how science has backed up the claims of the Lemba in the face of years of doubt and prejudice. The archaeological clues, the DNA evidence, and the Lemba's own oral history add up to a very convincing argument. It reminds me that first impressions can often be misleading. It was hard to believe that a tribe of black Africans could be the descendants of ancient Israelites. But that's exactly what they appear to be.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.